On the evening of December 11, 1978, 15-year-old Robert Piest was finishing up his shift at a local pharmacy in Des Plaines, Illinois. He asked his mother to wait for a moment because a contractor wanted to speak with him about a high-paying job. He walked out into the cold night and was never seen again. The man Robert went to meet was John Wayne Gacy. To anyone looking from the outside, Gacy represented the exact opposite of a threat. This photograph captures the bizarre contradiction of Gacy's life. He ran a successful construction company, served as a Democratic precinct captain, and regularly dressed up as his alter ego, Pogo the Clown, to volunteer at children's hospitals and host neighborhood block parties. When a child disappears, investigators typically look for a drifter or someone with a known history of violence. Here, the prime suspect was a respected homeowner and businessman who actively entertained the local children. But that clean public facade cracked almost immediately. Lieutenant Joseph Kozenczak ran a standard background check and unearthed a sealed 1968 conviction from Iowa. Gacy had served 18 months in prison for the sodomy of a teenage boy. Recognizing the extreme danger, the Des Plaines police bypassed standard procedures. They instantly launched a relentless 24-hour surveillance operation on Gacy. Officers tailed his black Oldsmobile, staked out his Summerdale home, tracked his PDM work vehicles, and monitored his teenage employees. Every passing hour reduced the likelihood of finding Robert alive. The detectives were locked in a high-stakes race, hoping the pressure of a continuous tail would force Gacy into making a critical mistake before the trail went completely cold. Instead of panicking, Gacy reveled in the attention. He openly mocked the officers tailing him, driving erratically to lose his pursuers, and even invited the surveillance detectives into local restaurants to buy them meals. During a breakfast with the officers, Gacy leaned across the table and casually remarked that clowns can get away with murder. He operated with such arrogance because he had spent years perfecting his system. He used his business, PDM Contractors, as a mechanism to scout victims. He offered lucrative tip-offs to young men, often runaways or hitchhikers, knowing their absences wouldn't immediately trigger a police search. Once he lured a target to his house, he would offer alcohol or drugs and suggest a magic trick. He would demonstrate how to escape from the handcuffs, then ask the victim to try. The moment those handcuffs snapped shut, the trick ended. Gacy would then subject his captives to hours of torture before strangling them with a rope tourniquet. By hiding behind the respectability of his contracting business and his civic volunteer work, he had built a self-sustaining, nearly invisible hunting ground right in the middle of the suburbs. Gacy was able to operate for so long because the legal system repeatedly ignored the warnings. Years earlier, a teenager named John Butkovich vanished after working for PDM. His parents actively begged the Chicago police to investigate Gacy, but their pleas went nowhere. In early 1978, a young man named Jeffrey Rignall survived being abducted, chloroformed, and brutally tortured by Gacy. Rignall went directly to the police and even tracked down Gacy's address himself, yet authorities failed to pursue the lead. Gacy's deep ties to local politics provided a heavy shield. He organized neighborhood parades and even secured special clearance to be photographed with First Lady Rosalind Carter, projecting an aura of legitimacy that consistently deflected police scrutiny. During a search of Gacy's home, detectives digging through a kitchen trash bin found a torn photo receipt from the Nissen Pharmacy. It was traced to a teenage girl who had lent her winter coat to Robert Piest on the very night he vanished. Days later, officers were inside the house again on another pretext. One of them flushed a toilet, and the sudden draw of air pushed a rancid smell up through the home's heating ducts, the unmistakable scent of rotting flesh. The constant surveillance and mounting pressure finally broke his composure. On December 20th, a heavily intoxicated Gacy sat in his defense attorney's office, pointed to a newspaper article about the missing pharmacist's boy, and confessed that the teenager was dead and in a river. The political connections and years of systemic failure that had shielded Gacy finally collapsed under the combined weight of a single receipt and the scent rising from the floor vents. Armed with Gacy's erratic behavior and the physical evidence, police secured a second search warrant on December 21st. This time, they specifically targeted the dark, damp crawlspace beneath Gacy's house. evidence technicians breached the 38-foot dirt enclosure and began to dig. Within minutes of breaking the topsoil, they uncovered a human arm bone. This police photograph shows the grim reality. Gacy buried 26 young men in trenches under his floorboards, 3 elsewhere and 4 in the river. Removing them required an agonizing forensic operation, mapping overlapping graves and sifting through dirt to match remains to decades-old dental records. 8213 Summerdale Avenue was effectively a mass grave sitting quietly on a pleasant residential street, housing what was, at the time, the deadliest serial killing spree in American legal history. At trial, Gacy's legal team attempted an insanity defense, claiming multiple personalities had committed the crimes. The jury rejected the plea completely. Gacy was convicted of 33 counts of murder and was executed by lethal injection in 1994. The case left a permanent scar on the American public. It shattered the illusion that affluent suburbs were inherently safe and exposed the fatal consequences of police dismissing missing person reports for runaways and marginalized youths. The investigation into Robert Piest's disappearance also highlighted a glaring flaw in the legal system. At the time, Illinois police were legally required to wait a full 72 hours before they could initiate an official search for a missing teenager. Realizing the danger of that institutional delay, Gacy's own defense attorney, Sam Amirante, later authored the Missing Child Recovery Act, striking the mandatory waiting period from Illinois law. Other states quickly followed. Out of the horrific loss caused by John Wayne Gacy, the foundation was laid for a rapid response network that would eventually evolve into the modern Amber Alert system, ensuring that when a child vanishes, the search begins the